my clients get amazing results. Okay, we're live on StreamYard, so Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. Haven't been on Twitter since Threads was released, maybe once, I think. So I've been working more and more with women, busy women who travel far and wide all the time. They do 14, 15, 16-hour days. They work with different time zones. And let's face it, when it comes to nutrition, it can often feel like one extra thing to factor in, to think about, to do. And I don't blame people for not wanting to think about it. I don't blame people for not wanting to have to put in the effort or just create the mental bandwidth to consider everything that they eat. It can be exhausting. I get it. If you're up at 4:30, if you're in bed 10 p.m., it is a long ass day, okay? And people often don't have the bandwidth, nor do they want to feel like they have to have the bandwidth to think about food more than what's necessary. And there's different tools that I use and different approaches and methodologies that I use to help these busy women just streamline their processes so that they get all the nutrients they need, get all the macronutrients they need. So protein, carbs, fat, but micronutrients as well. So vitamins and minerals without compromising their already limited bandwidth. Because again, let's face it, it's another thing to consider. It's another thing to factor in. So if you have any questions, please do put them in the comments. I want to make sure that I address all your concerns. I have used these methodologies myself, having lost and kept off 15 kilos, 15 kilos, that's about 35, 38 pounds perhaps. Not so familiar with the conversion. So it's tried, it's true, it's tested. It's what I use for myself, and it's what I teach my clients to make their lives simpler. Okay, so 33 pounds. Personally, have lost 33 pounds and kept that off. What I like to do for the people who have forever changing schedules, they could have 3 meetings come up in the morning, they could be then shifted to the evening. They might have a business meeting at the start of the day, they might have a long haul flight at the end of the day. They might have to travel between 3 different locations to see clients in between. You get it. Those who have chaotic schedules that can change a lot with very short notice, what I like to do is go to town in thinking about all the different scenarios those people can find themselves in. So if you're training in the morning, if you're not training in the morning, if you're training in the evening versus not training in the evening, if you have a tasting menu in the afternoon, if you don't, if you have a business lunch, a business dinner, a business lunch, and business dinner, you get the point. What I like to do with my clients is come up with all the different scenarios and different options that can occur and put together different templates that they can plug and play to adjust accordingly. When you factor in all that can happen, and when you understand how you can tweak and adjust your macronutrient intake, where you position your meals, where you position your snacks based on your schedule, suddenly eating is a lot less stressful because not only do you have a plan A, but you also have a plan B, plan C, plan D, and even potentially plan D, E, F, G, etc. That is incredibly helpful for people who have hectic and forever changing schedule. It's something I use on myself. I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm training clients in the evening, let's say I have someone at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., that is typical dinner time for me. I would usually have dinner somewhere between 6:30 and 7:30 in the evening. What I'll do in those instances is I'll bring my dinner earlier into the day. So instead of being fixated on having dinner at 7 p.m., I'll instead have a super early dinner. So I'll have my dinner after my workout, closer to 4 p.m., and then I'll have my 4 p.m. snack at dinner time. So closer to 7 p.m. In between a 7 and 8 p.m. client, I might just have a protein bar, and then I might have a little bit more to snack on once I'm home. And what would that snack look like? Look, it might be corn thins with hummus, a carrot with hummus, something to eat after my magnesium tablets go down and before I go to bed. So when you factor in all the different possibilities in terms of how your day can look, what things are likely to change, what is likely to come up, then you feel really empowered to make those tweaks based on those circumstances, because no 2 days are exactly alike for a lot of people. There are a lot of options, a lot of potentialities, if that's a word, a lot of things that can come up at very short notice. When you understand when is the most optimal time to have carbs, to have coffee, how much protein you need in a day, how to spread that out, suddenly you feel a lot more empowered to tweak accordingly. And so this is a huge thing I do with my clients. I, again, do a deep dive analysis on their lifestyle. I kind of audit their lifestyle and look at what is likely to occur in a typical day for them or a very atypical day for them. We map out those options and those different instances and scenarios, and we reverse engineer from there to ensure they're still getting all those nutrients, all the macros, protein, carbs, fat, micronutrients, minerals and vitamins, and you just still get the nourishment you need, which is great. Okay, so if we're training in the morning, we're going to want to have some carbs before training. If you're training in the morning, it's a great time to have some coffee or caffeine before a workout. If you're training in the evening, we have to be mindful of caffeine, of course, because we want to sleep at some point. If you're training in the evening, we want to make sure that we're not going too long between lunch and dinner, that there's not too much time between lunch and dinner, because then when you go to train, you're not going to have much fuel. That lunch is kind of already being digested, 4, 5, 6 hours later. There's not so much of your lunch available in the body and circulating in the bloodstream for you to tap into and to utilize. So these are all different things that we need to consider. For some people, lunch is really hard to make happen. Sometimes lunch just doesn't happen. And if it consistently doesn't happen, then we plan to not have lunch, or we plan to adjust our approach based on the assumption that lunch won't happen. So as you can see, having templates that accommodate for all the different scenarios and situations based on your lifestyle, based on what can happen, what is likely to happen, what you might do in terms of movement, exercise, training, all makes a tremendous difference in getting that clarity on understanding what to eat when and in what quantities and volumes. That is one of the hugest tools I use. It's templates. It's thinking about your day almost like Tetris, like blocking out different parts of your day. So instead of thinking I have to have breakfast at 7 a.m., thinking I need to have a meal between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. If it's 7 a.m. because that's what your day demands of you, then 7 a.m. it is. If you're having a slightly later start to the day, or if you have a 7 a.m. meeting, you perhaps don't want to wake up to eat at 6:30 in the morning. That's fine. It then may make more sense to have breakfast at 8 or 8:30. So there's no right way to go about this per se. It's just putting your lifestyle as the first thing to consider. This is where a lot of people go wrong. They look at things to cut out of their diet, basically how to make themselves as miserable as possible, and then they wonder why they can't stick to it and feel really horrible about life 4 weeks later. That's obviously going to happen when you take all the fun things out of your diet. Versus looking at, okay, what does my typical day look like? Or what do some of my days look like as a recurring theme? And reverse engineering from there and making the food intake fit around your lifestyle rather than forcing the food in at particular times. The templates have been tremendously helpful for my clients. It's tremendously helpful for myself because, again, I could be up at, I'm usually up at 4:30 in the morning to train people by 6 a.m. I don't necessarily want to get up half an hour earlier for the sake of eating. So again, when you have these templates, you learn how to plug and play based on circumstances, based on lifestyle. And that's a much more sustainable way to create change versus forcing food down the hatch just to tick the box. Okay, you don't have to do it that way. And especially if your lifestyle doesn't allow for you to eat at consistent times, that just doesn't make sense. So factoring in lifestyle first, reverse engineering from there can make a huge difference for people who have 14, 15, 16-hour days, long haul flights, lots of travel, last minute meetings, meetings that run overtime, meeting in right ear, meeting in left ear. You get the picture. One of my favorite tools when it comes to logging calories. So if you're watching this, listening to this, wondering what's my take on logging and tracking, I think it is a tremendously powerful tool when used as a tool and rather than a way to judge yourself and be an asshole towards yourself. Because no one needs help judging themselves. No one needs help being harder on themselves. And let's face it, like we all tend to excel in that area of life. So when it's used as a tool to gain data, to gain insight, it can be tremendously powerful because you typically don't know what's in food because you don't study it, because you don't have to. It's not recommended. Well, sorry, it's not compulsory in schools. You're not a nutritionist or dietitian, probably. You're just, the average person doing tremendous things. I think it's really funny how people expect that they should know so much about fitness and nutrition when they haven't even dedicated their life to studying it. That always gets me. It's a really, really powerful tool when used in the right way. And a lot of people don't know where their nutritional deficiencies lie until they study it. So when you are logging food, I like to use Cronometer. I find it to be incredibly accurate. A lot of their databases have to be cross-referenced or pulled from government sources, which means that the margin of error tends to be a lot lesser. I've seen food diary entries on MyFitnessPal where people have entered fish as a food that they ate. And when it took the macros into consideration, it came up displaying no fat. And I'm talking about an oily fish. Okay, so obviously if it's an oily fish, if it's seafood, it's going to have some fat in it. That's to be expected. The beauty, which is also a double-edged sword, also a tremendous downside to different apps such as MyFitnessPal, is anyone can add anything to the database. That's great. It's also really horrible because if you don't know what you're doing and the average person doesn't, it's very easy to use the wrong data. It's very easy to pull incorrect information and massively undershoot how much you're eating in terms of calories, but also in terms of micronutrients, so vitamins and minerals. I find Cronometer to be the most accurate, still relatively easy to use. Sometimes you do have to use substitutions because what you are entering is maybe not what you would find on Cronometer. If you can find a relatively similar substitution, it works great. And I love the insight on micronutrients as well. So again, vitamins and minerals. If you are chronically under consuming B vitamins, yeah, we would probably suspect you're going to be a little lower on energy, quote unquote energy. So I have done that for myself. I tend to do this once every 6 months where I look at what I'm currently eating, how I'm currently eating, and I'll log what I consume for about 2 weeks to see what I'm getting. Am I getting enough protein, enough fat, enough B vitamins, enough selenium, copper, you name it. And what I did find a few years ago was that I wasn't getting enough B vitamins. Subsequently, I have decided to supplement that because I just don't eat a lot of B vitamin rich foods. I just don't gravitate towards them. I don't like them necessarily. So instead of forcing myself to eat those foods, and some of them honestly just don't digest too well for myself, I just supplement instead. Okay. Super insightful and a really, 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 again, good tool to use when you use it for the sake of being a tool rather than a way to criticize and judge yourself. Now, you've heard me talk about protein before, the most underconsumed macronutrient ever. That is going to make a tremendous difference when you increase your protein intake. So Cronometer is excellent at displaying that. It's a really great way as a coach to preset a person's recommended caloric intake, but also macro goals. So protein, carbs, fat, I can look at a person, look at their goals, age, height, gender, activity level, and preset in Cronometer what I suggest their intake to be. So Cronometer would be my second go-to tool. I think it's simple, easy to use, straightforward. My clients love it. They find it to be really, really insightful, really helpful. And as a coach, I love the visibility on seeing what my clients track. So when I log into my coaching panel, I can see what my clients have logged. Again, very easy as a coach to preset a person's goals when it comes to caloric intake, but also macronutrient intake. I honestly think it's really, really, really great software, really well thought out, really well put together, really accurate. And accuracy is huge because you may think that you're in a caloric deficit, though if your numbers are not quite adding up, then perhaps you're not, and you're wondering why the weight isn't shifting or why it's perhaps even going up. You may not, in fact, be in the deficit that you think you're in if you're using inaccurate software. So that to me is a really, really, really great tool to use also to build awareness. So for me, a lot of logging of calories in the effort to log food is not the opportunity to judge and critique and criticize. And honestly, I'm not so interested in how many calories my clients are consuming initially. Absolutely not. Up front, not really. I'm much more interested in understanding their macros and micros. Again, looking for those holes that we can fill with either really high quality supplements or looking at different foods we can consume to cover more of those vitamins and minerals is tremendously powerful. It's, again, a really great way to see how much protein a person is eating. That's going to aid recovery from training. It's going to aid in the building of muscle. The more of you as a composition is muscle, the more energy you burn just by standing still. And who doesn't want that? Okay, so to keep your metabolism nice and high, we need, well, what really, really helps is muscle mass. To build muscle, we need protein and resistance training. So lifting heavy shit, which you've heard me talk about 100 billion times, as well as sufficient protein intake, which barely anyone is getting enough protein. In fact, most people, I would say, are not. Sufficient protein looks like 1.5 grams per kilogram of what you weigh per day as a starting point. No, your kidneys are not going to fall out. We've studied people consuming as much as 3 grams per kilo. They're still fine. Their kidneys are still good. If anything's going to be damaging to their kidneys, it's going to be performance enhancing drugs. Not to say that everyone is doing that. That's definitely not the case. But if you're worried about your kidneys, performance enhancing drugs, alcohol, come on, like other things that you just know you probably shouldn't be eating and drinking. So use a little bit of common sense there. Unfortunately, common sense is not too common. So that would be my second favorite tool is Cronometer to get those powerful insights on your macros, micros, and caloric intake. Amazing tool as a coach, amazing tool as a client. I've used it on the coaching side. I've used it on the client side in terms of me logging my own calories, my own food. Tremendously helpful, tremendously insightful, and has helped me time and time again to identify those gaps that I need to fill with my own nutrition, okay? If you're consistently not getting enough of a macronutrient or a micronutrient, you're not going to perform your best. How are you to identify that unless you're logging things? I mean, then ultimately you probably have to wait for some blood work to show that. And sometimes it takes a while for these deficiencies to show on blood work. So God only knows how long you've gone not feeling your best. And, you probably just don't have time to not feel your best. You don't have time to not have energy. You don't have time to be slowed down. You don't have time for things that can be prevented, very easily prevented through adequate nutrition, supplementation, hydration, recovery, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, making the most of your nutrition, tremendously powerful. Not enough people are looking into that. Not enough people are doing that. A lot of people want to lose the weight, but they don't want to put in the effort of logging their calories. They're like, oh, I have to weigh my food. Oh, I have to log what I'm eating. Like, no shit. If you got in a car and you didn't know how much fuel was in it, would you just drive it as far as you possibly could and hope for the best? Like, is that your fucking game plan? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, honestly. So yes, you do have to build that skill. If you want to lose weight consistently and understand what is conducive to you losing weight and keeping it off for longer than 4, 12, 6 weeks, you have to build that skill. You can get to a point where you can eyeball food and you can look at a plate and have a rough idea of how much of each food is on there. But again, you don't learn how to walk overnight. You don't learn how to approximate and guesstimate how much food is on your plate from 6 weeks of practice, from 12 weeks of practice, from 24 months of practice. That comes from years of practice. Okay, so absolutely essential skill, in my opinion, to then be able to go forward in life and not have to rely on always having kitchen skills with you. Yes, you're going to have to obviously put in the work and develop that skill, and skills take time, like so much more time than you understand. Minimum 12 weeks to build a habit. 66 days. Okay, that's 10 weeks of consistent input. Consistent being the key word here. Okay, that's a long time. It's not 21 days. It's minimum of 66. You are still not an expert at looking at a plate of food and going, that's 100 grams of chicken, that's 200 grams of rice in 66 days. You're not there yet. Okay, like, sorry, you're part of the way there, but you're not all the way there. So that needs to be factored in. So before I go on too much of a tangent, because I have a tendency to do that, we're going to go on to my third favorite tool, game-changing nutrition tool. This app, I can't quite remember how I found it, but I absolutely adore it. It is amazing for grocery shopping. And especially if you have a partner or a housemate or a family or a helper, the app is called Bring. Bring. I am assuming they have an Android version, though I didn't check that, so I do apologize. I would think they have an Android version. They certainly have an iOS version. It's really helpful because you can create different lists and you can add different people to those different lists. So for example, I have a list for personal errands, like my personal to do out and about, need to get matcha, dark chocolate because they're my daily essentials, antihistamines because yesterday I couldn't breathe, my allergies were so bad, ashwagandha because I had sky high anxiety. I mean, these are actual things that were on my to-do list yesterday. So this is like real life shit I'm talking about. And then you can have shared lists with other house members, again, spouse, partner, helper, family. You could create a special list for a birthday. If there's a birthday party and there were different things you had to get, like themed serviettes, themed cups, themed plates, streamers, balloons. Again, you can create that separate list and have the relevant people be a part of that list. So Bring has been an amazing, amazing, amazing addition to my life. The app is so flipping simple to use. It's super cute too because every item comes up as a square and it's red initially. So when you search for an item, it will bring that item up as a red square with a cute little icon, and then you it'll come up as green, and then you press it and then it turns red. Let me double check that. So essentially, obviously the red things are red because you need them, and the green things you don't need to worry about because you have them. Yes, so initially I was correct. When you search for an item, let's say it's orange juice, and you click on it, it comes up and displays, I don't know how much of this you can see, but it will come up as being red. And then when you press it to say I got it, then it turns green, and then you don't need to worry about it because you're telling the app that you got it. So love that. They do also have inspiration. So they have recipes. You can add things to my favorite recipes. You can see the link to the recipe. It will auto-populate the ingredients that you need to make that recipe. So here I'm looking at Jamie Oliver's creamy paneer and veg curry. It just came up. This is not what I searched, okay? Like, don't at me. This is not food that I would traditionally eat or search out or look for. I'm just telling you what automatically came up. So Jamie Oliver's creamy paneer and vegetable curry. It has 8 servings, but you can increase that in the app itself, which is super handy because if I wanted to make it for 10 people, first of all, I would have to make 9 more friends. So that's definitely, I need to add that to my to-do list, make 9 more friends. And then it's going to recalibrate the portions based on obviously how many serves. So it has up here olive oil, 1.25 teaspoons of ground turmeric. That doesn't sound like enough. I'm just gonna, how much does it serve? Anyway, 1.25 teaspoons of cumin seeds, 1 1/4 lemon, 2.5 red onions, 2.5 mixed peppers. And if I scroll all the way down to the bottom, I can select which list I want to add that to. So I can add that to my personal list or I could add that to a birthday or event list. And I can add all 29 ingredients from this recipe to my shopping list. And so if you are forever trying to remember groceries, remember items that you need to put on the shopping list, get from Redmart, get from Lazada, this just helps me keep my brain in check by taking these things out of my head, putting them into the app, and adding it to a list. Amazing, amazing. And on my daily to-do list, one of the first things I do is I go through my list, I look at all the errands I need to run, and then I try and get those done ASAP. And so those smaller on-the-go items that I need to get, I put them into Bring on my personal list, and then I'll either go to Lazada, go to Redmart, order them. Anything that I need to get in person, I'll go and get in person. Though I do try and maximize my efficiency, maximize my time by not physically going to a store, because then too it becomes a little bit distracting. If you like food, if you're hungry, do not go shopping when you're hungry. Can I just say, I am the proud owner of aisle 4 when I am hungry. It's just a terrible idea. And so in order to maximize your time, your efficiency, I opt to buy everything as much as possible online, unless of course something is super immediate or urgent. And then of course I will collect it in person, usually when I'm in Katong, because there is a cold storage there. Though if I'm in Anson like I am right now, I might go to 100 AM or Icon Village. So Bring, amazing, super, super, super recommend it, especially if you have children and they're always nagging you to get different things from the groceries, or if you always order your groceries, and that's another hot tip for you. I always order my groceries by the same day each week. So today is Wednesday. I always have my groceries ordered by Wednesday. Not delivered on Wednesday necessarily, usually Friday afternoon or Saturday afternoon. Those slots just work better for my lifestyle and my schedule. Though I aim to have my groceries ordered before Wednesday. It gives me enough time to look in the fridge, look in the pantry, see what I have, see what I don't have. It gives me enough time to then schedule in the delivery, because my schedule can change. My schedule can change a lot at the very last minute. So I need to actually see on my schedule when I can feasibly have groceries delivered, when I can be there, or where someone can be there to then put them in the fridge. But that is a really easy way to stay organized, especially when it comes to meal prep and eating healthy and clean and lean and all those good things, is give yourself a cutoff day and try and have them ordered by the same time of day each week, and then get your family members on board with adding their items to the app Bring. So that's my third hot tip. The app Bring for groceries and all kinds of lists. They are constantly updating and adding new items that you can use for yourself, and it's super, super, super helpful. Love, love, love it. And so that was my third tip, though I did have another one, which I wanted to just throw in there because, why not? I want to help people. And so if I have a hot tip that I can give away, I'm going to do that. My fourth and final tip is, when it comes to meal prep, I found it to be really helpful to cook your protein and carbs separately, especially if you have family members, because not everyone always wants the same volume and quantity of protein and carbs. And some people have a high requirement for carbs, some people have a lower requirement, some people have a high requirement for protein. I easily chow down 2.4 grams of protein per kilo of body weight a day. I don't function very well if I don't get that much, and that's a lot, okay? A lot, because I have a fair amount of muscle mass, because I am quite active, because I have an active job. I stand for about 17 hours a day. It is almost 1 p.m. and I've been on my feet for 9 hours as it is, just to give you some context. So I typically don't need as many carbs, or I just don't gravitate as much towards carbs as what a lot of other people do. For me, it's like 25 more grams of chicken breast, 20 grams more beef mince, another hard-boiled egg. And that's what I find myself gravitating towards. So I am all for having like a spaghetti bolognese before training for leg day. For me, that would be tremendously powerful to get all those carbs from the pasta, obviously the protein from the beef mince, and some of those nutrients from the sauce and the vegetables as well. though I wouldn't really eat that for dinner. I just don't need so many carbs so late in the night. And I'm not here to tell you to not eat carbs after 6 p.m. That's a different conversation. That is another time, that's another place. Though I'm just not going to do a whole lot with those carbs at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So my point being is when you live with a number of people, when different people have different preferences when it comes to carbs and protein and fat, this can be a really helpful way to ensure people still get what they want from a meal, but without having to have the same composition, if that makes sense. So again, if I were to make myself a spaghetti bolognese, for me it would be 90% beef and like 10% spaghetti. Though for other people, they would prefer it the other way around. And for other people's lifestyles and other people's activity levels, that may make more sense, especially if someone's about to run a marathon or do a triathlon or a very endurance-based sport. They're going to need a lot more carbohydrates before that to sustain them. So my fourth tip being, if you live with a lot of people, maybe you have a helper, which can be tremendously helpful. Obviously, that's why they call it a helper. Cooking your protein and your carbohydrate source and keeping them separate. So not just combining everything together, but going maybe the protein in the vegetables or the protein separate to the vegetables, separate to the carbs can be really helpful because again, then people can kind of pick and choose how much of each they get. And again, we'll all have different requirements when it comes to those ratios and those proportions. Again, some people, they like really rich tasting foods. They like the heavier, saltier, creamier cheeses. This is my mom. I could never eat as much cheese as I would just die. Okay, I just want to explode thinking about it. I definitely cannot eat as many carbs as other people. If I eat carbs before midday, I feel very slowed down. I feel very, just slowed down. Cognitively, I don't function as well. I just feel off. But there are people who could just not eat as much protein as me, and that would feel completely off for them, and that's totally okay. So in terms of keeping lots of people happy and satisfied with their meals and accommodating to different requirements on a nutritional level, having the separation between carbs and fat and protein, or carbs versus vegetables, which, vegetables are carbs, can make an enormous difference too. So protein and veg and carbs, or protein and carbs separate. Then you can kind of pick and choose. This is kind of like the great thing about tacos, is that with tacos, you can just add as much beef mince or pulled chicken or pork as you want, and then top up with the veg that your heart desires, and the cheese or sour cream if you like. If you can do that, I can't do dairy, lactose intolerant here, so that is just not happening for me. Though some people would, again, some people love the rich food, the creamy food, the, decadent, what is another word for rich? Very, very salty, very, very creamy. That is just some people's flavor preference. Some people, that's just their game. For me, it's a little bit more on the protein, savory side. And again, some people are just going to want more carbs. Some people are going to want less carbs. Some people are going to need more carbs. Some people are not going to need so many carbs. And that's fine. One way to accommodate for that is to keep everything separate, and then you can mix it together when the time comes to consume it, so that it still feels like a meal, but it's at the ratio and composition that feels better for you. So they're my 3+1 bonus game-changing nutritional tools that I use for myself, having lost and kept off 15 kilos, which is 33 pounds apparently. And this is what I use with my clients as well. So just to recap, the templates was my first tip. If you're only joining in now, I'm going to post this onto my feed, so make sure you go back to it and watch it in full. But templates based on how you're living your day to day. Okay, so if you have workout days versus non-workout days, tasting menus versus no tasting menus, business lunch versus no business lunch, business dinner versus no business dinner, business lunch and dinner versus eating in for lunch and dinner, long haul flight, etc., etc. These are things to factor in. You can put together templates that will help you to structure how you eat based on those scenarios. Super important whenever we create change that we factor in your lifestyle, because then it integrates a little more seamlessly. Change is hard enough to create as it is. It takes at least 66 days to make or break a habit. 66, not 21, and even up to 250. So reduce the friction, think about your lifestyle, how you live now, and build everything around that rather than coming from a place of force and trying to force things in here and there. It just doesn't work, okay? We can make these integrations a lot more like Tetris when we consider lifestyle first rather than let's make life as miserable and hard as possible. Like, people don't understand how hard they make life for themselves. They think this has to be hard. And it's important to discern between effort and friction and strain. Yes, it's going to require effort, like duh. That shouldn't surprise anyone. But should it be strenuous? No. Should it feel impossible? Also no. And the moment you feel that way, game over, you're not going to sustain anything. So do yourself a favor, factor in lifestyle first, reverse engineer from there. Okay, so templates be my first tip, first tool / tip. Second one being Cronometer. That is my favorite way to log calories and have clients log calories. Way better and more accurate than a lot of the alternatives out there, such as MyFitnessPal. Like, hate me, but that's what I have to say about that. You cannot actually get traction in creating caloric deficit and understand what you're eating if the calories are incorrect to begin with. And that's the problem with a lot of these apps. Anyone can add anything to the database, great. But if you don't know what to look out for, if you don't know what to select, your calories could be way off. And that's not going to help you. It's only going to make the process slower. And let's face it, you wanted to lose 5-10 kilos as of yesterday. Okay, that's just human nature. So Cronometer, Cronometer. It has an orange badge. That is my preferred way to do that. I love it for logging my own calories. I love it for my clients as well. And it's been an absolute game changer in helping them shift weight and just understanding what they're eating on a deeper level, understanding what's in their food in terms of macronutrients, protein, carbs, fat, as well as micronutrients being vitamins and minerals. So both are important. Make sure you consider both. And Cronometer does an excellent job of that. Then my third tip being Bring, another app I love, excellent for keeping tabs on shopping lists and to-do lists. I love this because you can add people to shared lists. So if you have a big household, or if you just have a lot of tabs open in your brain, or you live with people who have very different nutritional requirements to you, if you have a helper, the app Bring is excellent, dead simple, super friendly, user-friendly to use. Love it, has streamlined my life and helps me keep on top of what I need to get. There are recipes in the app itself. So if you're looking for inspiration, it's very, very easy to look at the serving size, increase the serving size, decrease the serving size. The ingredients will auto recalibrate based on how many portions, and it will allow you to add all those ingredients from the recipe to your list. And so it's like so seamless, so easy. You get inspiration, you get everything recalibrated, you get all the ingredients added to your list, like bippity boppity boop. All you have to do is literally look through the inspiration, ton of recipes, even some from Jamie Oliver, which is really, really cool. Big fan of his work. And what's not to love? I mean, anything that reduces thinking when it comes to food is going to be a good thing. You know, we don't have time for this as it is. So do yourself a favor, get that app. I would imagine they have an Android version. You have to check though. I know for sure they have iOS, and I absolutely adore that. My last tip being, if you have a big household, if you have different requirements, nutritional requirements to the people you live with, sometimes it can be really helpful to cook your proteins and vegetables separately to your carbs, okay? Because again, some people are going to want a very spaghetti heavy spaghetti bolognese. Some people are going to want a very meat heavy spaghetti bolognese. Some people are fussy, some people are not. Everyone has slightly different nutritional requirements. It can be a really helpful way to keep everyone happy whilst not having to compromise and sacrifice too much. So I'm the person who would want most of my bolognese to be the beef mince or the veal or beef and veal. I just have a bucket ton of protein in my diet. I need it. I feel so hungry without it. Whereas other people may prefer to have more spaghetti, and that's totally fine. No shade, no judgment. if you're living with other people, if you have children, again, if you have a helper, just in terms of keeping most people happy most often, to be able to combine the portion of protein and carbs that you want or that they want can be a real game changer. So that's how I would cook my food if I had, if I had children. If my partner ate like me, I would keep their rice or their pasta separate to the chicken so that they could portion out what they want when they want, and they would be happy and I would be happy. So that can be really, really, really helpful, because again, not everyone has the same nutritional requirements. Not everyone needs those nutrients in the same ratios. So I guess that's what I'm getting at. If you liked this video, make sure you double tap and please share, because sharing is caring. Of course, if you're jumping in towards the end, make sure you go back to the start. I'm going to post this to my Instagram feed, so you will be able to see the whole thing. If you're on the other platforms, make sure you save it so you can refer back to it. Any questions, drop them down below. I will get back to you. And I am always open to your suggestions. So if there's something you want me to talk about, I want to know that you want me to talk about it. Like, give me those suggestions. Tell me, message me directly, put it in the comments section. Those suggestions are really helpful. I want to bring value to your life. In order to do that, I need to understand what you want to know about. I don't like guessing. I want the real answers, okay? So if there is a topic you feel I can cover in greater depth, or that I've never even considered, maybe not even addressed in my podcasts, make sure you tell me. Again, I want to help. I want to be of value to you. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next live. Until then, please make sure you double tap and let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Enjoy your week, and I'll see you on the next one.